helping a student build a sense of dignity and authenticity is absolutely fundamental to their growth. But for any teacher, this brings up a really tricky question. How do we help them become self-aware in a way that feels dignified? And maybe even more importantly, how do we teach them when to push harder and when it's okay to let go?
So, here's the big paradox we're diving into. How do we build up a student's self-image, help them feel dignified and confident, without accidentally pushing them to become, kind of fake? It's a really fine line, right? The line between genuine confidence and just putting on a good show. That's what we're going to unpack today. All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll look at why this whole idea of dignity can be a real double-edged sword. Then, we're going to deconstruct what the self even means, using some awesome tools from psychology. After that, we'll see what happens emotionally when there are gaps in that self. That'll lead us to the big question, when to push and when to pivot. And finally, we'll wrap it all up to see what it takes to build a truly authentic learner. Okay, let's jump into section 1. This is really the heart of the problem, that tension between wanting to be seen as a good student and actually feeling like one on the inside. I mean, think about it from a student's perspective. They're trying so hard to be that good student, the one who's on top of things, successful, all that. But the very act of keeping up that image can start to feel like a performance. And the harder they try to project this dignified, successful person, the more they might feel like a fraud inside. It creates this really tough internal conflict.
So, to really get to the bottom of this conflict, we need to break down the idea of the self, because it's not just one thing. And lucky for us, psychology gives us a fantastic toolkit to do just that.
First up, you've got the actual self. This one's pretty straightforward. It's who the student believes they are, right here, right now. It's their current skill set, their personality, all their strengths and weaknesses, at least as they see them. It's their reality.
Then there's the ideal self. This is the version of themselves they dream about becoming. It's made up of their own hopes, their own wishes, their own aspirations. You can almost think of it as their personal North Star, who they'd be if everything went perfectly.
And finally, we have the ought self. Now this one's different. This is the person the student feels they should be. It's based on their duties, their obligations, their responsibilities. And here's the key. This ought usually comes from the outside world, from parents, teachers, society. It's less about their personal dreams and way more about their perceived duties. And this diagram here, from Tory Higgins' Self-Discrepancy Theory, just lays it out perfectly. You see those 3 domains, actual, ideal, and ought. But here's the real kicker. Each one can be seen from 2 different perspectives. There's your own idea of your ideal self, but then there's what you think your parents' idea of your ideal self is. That distinction is so important for understanding where all that pressure comes from. Now, in this whole struggle to look good, we see 2 different kinds of faking it. On the one hand, you have impression management. This is a conscious performance. The student knows they're crafting an image for everyone else. But on the other side, you have something way more subtle, self-deceptive enhancement. This is when you actually start to believe your own hype. It's not a lie you tell others, it's a biased, way too positive belief you have about yourself. One's a show and the other's a delusion. So, we have these different versions of the self floating around. What happens when they don't line up? Well, this is where the emotional rubber really meets the road. Okay, here's the really brilliant insight. Not all gaps are created equal. Self-discrepancy theory tells us that different gaps produce totally different feelings. So if there's a gap between your actual self and your ideal self, your hopes and dreams, it feels like you're missing out on good things. That leads to feelings of dejection, sadness, and disappointment. But when the gap is between your actual self and your ought self, your duties, it feels like bad things are about to happen. That leads to agitation, fear, anxiety, even guilt. And this isn't just a cool theory. The research backs this up in a huge way. This model shows that the gap between your actual and ideal self is a powerful predictor of depression. It's that feeling of never reaching your dreams. Meanwhile, that gap between the actual and ought self, it's a unique predictor of social anxiety. It's that constant fear of not measuring up to your obligations and getting called out for it. These are distinct paths to real psychological pain. Okay, so we've got this amazing diagnostic tool. We can see the different selves, we can understand the emotional price of the gaps between them. So how does this actually help an educator make that tough call? When do you tell a student to push through, and when do you help them pivot? To figure that out, we can turn to another fantastic framework, expectancy value theory. And it's actually beautifully simple. A student's motivation really boils down to two key questions. First, expectancy. Do I actually think I can do this? And second, value. Do I even care about this goal? Is it important to me? So, using this theory, you can build a really practical three-step process. First, you just gather evidence. What's their work actually look like? What are they telling you? What are other people seeing? Second, you assess both expectancy and value. Do they believe they can succeed? And is this goal something they truly value, or is it just an ought they got from someone else? And third, you weigh their progress against the emotional cost. Is making a tiny bit of progress worth all the anxiety it's causing? And all of this leads to some really concrete things you can do in the classroom. You can literally show them the gap between their work and a great example to make it less abstract. You can design small, quick wins to build up that belief in success. You can use anonymous assignments to see what they can do when they're not trying to manage an impression. And maybe most importantly, you can help reframe what it means to let go. It's not failure, it's a smart, strategic choice. All right, let's bring it all home. Because the ultimate goal here isn't just about managing feelings or hitting targets, it's about helping build a certain kind of person. You know, that simplistic never give up mantra can sometimes be pretty harmful. The real goal is to give students the tools to be more self-aware. We want to help them build a self-concept that they can be proud of, one that's dignified, but one that's also real. It has to be grounded in an honest look at who they are, who they want to be, and what they can actually do. And this quote from Self-Determination Theory just hits the nail on the head. Real, lasting self-esteem. It doesn't come from chasing grades or getting likes. It's intrinsically motivated. It comes from focusing on your own inner values, not on getting approval from other people. It's about getting approval from yourself. So I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. What if we reframed the entire goal of education? What if it wasn't just about piling up successes, but about teaching students the really profound and necessary skill of navigating struggle, and yes, even failure, with dignity, and most of all, with authenticity? What would our schools look like then?